appreciate you being on, man. And we welcome you back on the show. We got James Lynch, freelance MMA journalist. Check out his content at Lynch Sports. If you have the chance, make sure to give him a follow. He's always following all the top UFC fighters, Bellator fighters on a regional scene as well. We love having him on. And welcome back to the Fightlete Report.
My pleasure, Sean. I always love doing your show. And hopefully with this pandemic slowly dying down a bit, we'll hopefully get to see each other at an event again soon. Hopefully. We'll
yeah, for sure. I've been on the Bellator MMA online media event. So
I've been seeing that. Yeah, it's been great. So that's good. You're still keeping active.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun covering those shows, and be able to cover shows that you normally wouldn't have access to because of location and stuff. And Bellator is always great, keeping everybody involved in the MMA world. So and
awesome.
I love it, Bellator, and obviously we have just had a big card with Cyborg. We're gonna have the next big card coming up, I think June 11th. So they're always keeping me busy on Friday evenings.
Yeah, it's great to see Bellator doing regular shows again since they moved over to Showtime. It's been awesome. So yeah, it's a rare weekend. We don't have any MMA this weekend. I'll take it because it's been kind of busy, but it's there's a lot coming up here in the next couple months. It's gonna be great.
Well, yeah, we still have CFFC for those who follow regional MMA.
That's right, back-to-back shows. I love how they do that. I saw you interviewed Rakeem Cleveland, who's going to be fighting. So love Rakeem. Good to see him try and get some more hardware on his resume.
Oh, definitely. That's an exciting fight, and that's on Friday night. And also they have a women's strawweight title fight on the 29th as well, which is Saturday. So two nights of action. So you got some of your MMA fix, but
exactly. And regional MMA is important.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think UFC, they do a lot of events, and it's hard to catch every single event. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like every weekend they have something going on.
I agree. So the balance is the key. You got to pick and choose. I like to PVR stuff, and then I can watch it on my own time. That's kind of how I navigate through all this, because you're right. It's just too hard to keep up with everything, especially if you got, in my case, I got a wife and kids. Like you got to balance it all quite well, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. And then I want to get your thoughts on the last pay-per-view, UFC 262. Like, how much did you feel like this was a great card? What was your biggest takeaways from it? We had the main event between Oliveira and Chancler, highly touted main event, but two guys that aren't like in that echelon of superstar, like Dustin Poirier, McGregor, and Ferguson and Gaethje. What they've reached. So it was like their turn to reach that upper echelon. So what do you think of that matchup?
What an incredible fight. I think it was one of those fights where I don't really think there was a loser. Yes, Chancler lost, but I think leading up to him getting finished, he nearly finished Oliveira himself. I think it answered a lot of questions. Some people, when Chancler came over and he beat Dan Hooker, they're like, well, he caught him. But it's like, no, he's actually very good. Like he was very close to winning the title at UFC 262. And for Charles Oliveira, what a story. This is a guy that, came into the UFC in 2010, had some ups and downs, had some issues with different weight classes. If you remember at featherweight, he was having some troubles making weight and just fighting a lot of good competition. But to see him turn it around, and really go on this run and win the lightweight title is just so cool. And I think it's a reminder to a lot of fighters out there that, hey, if you lose a couple fights, it's not the end of the world. You can turn this around. And it was just such a great performance, such a good fight, like action-packed, could have gone either way. Oliveira comes out on top. It was just a great story and a great win for Charles Oliveira, who has had one of the best career turnarounds in MMA history.
I agree, definitely. And it's an interesting fact, James, is I was both at their both Chancler and Oliveira's last loss. I witnessed them in person.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was UFC 218. Oliveira was beaten by Paul Felder, who's now retiring. And it was also Michael Chancler was knocked out. I think it was Bellator, I forget, like 224, 225. I think it's 225. He was knocked out by Mauricio Pitbull. Yeah, so that's pretty cool that I've actually seen both their losses live.
Exactly. You just can't go to their next fight. We should use you if you're ever betting on their opponents. Just get you to go to the cards, and then we'll know who's going to win, right?
For sure. Eventually, hopefully I'll get to a chance to get to the UFC media, because obviously they're both there, and I think they're going to be there to stay. I think Chandler's going to be there to stay for a while. I think so is Oliveira. Obviously, that guy's a blue chipper. And I always kept thinking, like, although I had Chandler win the fight, like Oliveira just deserves it, man, after putting that much time. But we know it's not about in UFC how long you've been there. It's not about how much tenure you have. It's all about what you can do when you get to that moment. And he did it.
Yeah, it's a lot of there's so many things that's why the sport's so fascinating, right? Like it's not just, you can't just win a couple fights and expect things to happen. Like the timing's important, injuries are important. Like, it just sort of worked out for both of these guys that they got to have this fight, and we got to see it, and we got a new champion. I think it's the first time since 2017 that we have a new lightweight champion. Yeah. Like it's been a while. So yeah, good for these guys for capitalizing on it, especially Chancler, where, I think he left Bellator at the right time. Had he stayed, yeah, maybe he would have got the Pitbull. Well, he would have got the Pitbull rematch at some point, but I mean, he was going through a lot of opponents. So to see him in the UFC now, I think good timing. And for Oliveira, I think him making his run right now at a time when, you've got Khabib stepping away and when you've still got all these killers at the top, I think is interesting as well. So yeah, it's just been a really interesting time to see both of these fighters achieve success at this level.
Yeah, definitely. And we had Dariush, Ferguson. Didn't come as a surprise to me. I just thought that, Dariush had the better wrestling. And it's easier to be swept away, man, kind of where I live. We have a big Assyrian community, and we actually had they hosted Dariush. I was at that event. I got to interview him in person. It's about 6 years ago. So it's like through Facebook connection, it's hard not to get swept away. Oh, Dariush is the man, because you're part of that whole community, somewhat. And so, but I thought Ferguson was tough and always remains, a durable guy, and, like you said, he wants to bring violence, but obviously Dariush wasn't the guy that he could implement his game plan on. I hope to see Ferguson back in there, in short time, not a long time, but I think Dariush made his claim that he's up there, man. He could be in line for a title shot in a year.
It's two fighters going in opposite directions. Dariush right now in the prime of his career, this is a huge win for him. I mean, he could make a case for a title shot if he wanted to. I think he's right there. I think he probably needs one more just to, had he finished Ferguson, maybe he makes a case there. But, there's some really tough guys. You've got the McGregor-Poirier matchup coming up in July. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now at lightweight. And for Tony Ferguson, I think it's just a case of, it happens to all fighters. They regress. I mean, he's 38. He's taken a lot of injuries, had a lot of layoffs. At some point, the game is going to pass you by. And I remember Tony Ferguson was the guy that no one could figure out. Now I think people are figuring him out. And, I would hope the UFC would, this is what I think should happen with Ferguson. I would like to see him get sort of a notable veteran in his next fight and then call it a career, because he's not a contender. I don't know how much longer he wants to fight. I mean, he's not taking a time. Well, actually saying that, I mean, he took a lot of damage against Gaethje and against Oliveira as well. His arm almost got ripped off in that Oliveira fight, but you see what I'm saying? He's not a contender anymore, but I don't want to see him fight like an up and comer. I would rather see him fight a veteran and get a nice send off here. I think the Donald Cerrone rematch makes a bit of sense with the fact that their fight ended a bit. It was a cut, I believe, that ended a doctor stoppage that ended the first fight. Cerrone's also on a bit of a skid lately. Let's see what they can do at 155, sort of a loser leaves town match, to use a pro wrestling reference, and just let them have a fun fight, because I don't want to see Tony Ferguson fight like a Makhachev or someone like that, where he's just going to be a name that's going to be another fighter's going to build their resume off of. So that's what I think should happen with Ferguson.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what we'll see take place. I think Tony's going to be ready in a couple months and shake off this loss. But it's just, you can't help but buy into that hype, man. When he started talking, he was the most entertaining person at that press conference. I think he answered the most questions too. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seemed like he was answering tons more questions than anyone else, and just had that presence going. So it was hard not to be swept away. Oh man, El Kukui's back. He's going to do it. But Dariush was definitely the smart pick for that one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, you could sort of see what the UFC is doing here. They used Ferguson to build up Dariush. I think most people felt Dariush was going to win. Again, two opposite directions, Ferguson regressing, Dariush being in the prime. So it was, it was inevitable it was going to happen this way.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good card. I think that maybe fans were kind of like, sleep on this card. But if they weren't, they caught some great fights. I think that we saw, a lot of good turnarounds in people's careers as well. I think there's a lot of things that basically from this card into the next card that we're going to see, a lot of things being implemented,
Well, I think part of it as well is there was two fights that got moved off this card, right? We were supposed to have Edmund Shabazian and Jack Hermanson. They bumped that a week because of, I think, COVID stuff. Right. And then we had Nate Diaz and Leon Edwards, which was a big boost to this card, now moved to UFC 263. So I think that's kind of where the fans were sort of talking, being like, hey, Caitlin Chukagian and Viviana Araujo was on a pay-per-view, what's going on? Like, I think that was part of the reason, but it ended up being a great card. Having the crowd there obviously made a difference as well. And it was, you're right. It was a great card. And it just goes to show you can't just look at a card on paper and say it's not going to be good. You got to actually watch it. So.
And then Barboza, what he did to Shane Burgos, that was unforgettable. That
Unreal.
Was probably one of the best fights.
Yeah, and just a weird finish. You don't see that too often. It was like a delayed finish. I think Burgos' body just gave out. It reminded me a bit of the Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler fight where, Rory was just, his body's like, okay, no more. And he sort of just collapsed. Same sort of thing here with Burgos. It was kind of like, and I talked to Edson after the fight, he believes there's an accumulation of damage, which is what caused the knockout. Burgos' body just shutting down. Great fight though. And good for Edson Barbosa. He had that really close fight with Dan Ige. A lot of people felt like he won. Here's a guy that has found new life in a new division. And you look at who he's fought at 155 and people saying this guy's done. He had to fight Khabib and Kevin Lee. Now he's getting a big win over Burgos. I think this is a guy that even at his age could make a run for a title at featherweight.
I think so as well. Yeah, really big win, and he showed he's not done yet. And then we also had another legend on the card, Jacare Souza. He lost to Andre Muniz. I actually called this one. I said second round submission, and the odds were so great. I didn't even take the bet, but man, you could win a lot if you picked a first round submission, I believe.
No, exactly. And, it's one of those things where, anything can happen in MMA. I mean, submission first round on Jacare, not the likely, thing to happen. But we saw that a few months ago. Anthony Hernandez fought Rodolfo and ended up submitting him as well. So just goes to show that just because the style matchup is made doesn't mean it's going to necessarily end up that way. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Jacare Souza, I mean, again, another guy where I think he's regressed a bit. He's getting older. Yeah. And again, you see Andre Muniz, that's a big win for him. He can move on in his career. But yeah, it happens. It's very rare to have a fighter leave on a win when they're leaving the sport. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen for Jacare.
Yeah, for anybody who made money on that, you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Night. Yeah. I thought some other good fights with Andrea KGB Leash. He got the big victory. I had her as well winning that fight. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I just felt that she had the veteran skills and experience to beat Antonina.
Well, and there's a path to victory there, right? Caitlin Chukagian kind of showed this last year where if you take Antonina down, if you control her, her ground game's not up to par with the rest of the flyweights. And Andrea doesn't typically use her ground game, but she did. Good game plan. That triangle choke looked like it was on for like 2 minutes. Thankfully, she was able to transition to the armbar. Andrea looked outstanding in that fight, and good for her. She was on a losing streak. I mean, who knows what would have happened if she would have lost 4 in a row. To see her get a win like that was really big. And and Antonina, again, if you look at the pattern in her career, she wins one, loses one. That continued at UFC 262.
Definitely. We had Jordan Wright, gain another win in the UFC over Jamie Pickett in the first round. Very impressive fight as well for Jordan.
Absolutely. And this is a guy that, was coming off a brutal loss in his last fight. Jordan's always in entertaining fights, and to see him go out there and get a finish over Jamie Pickett, which is, very impressive. If you remember, Pickett has had a couple of fights that have gone the distance. So for Jordan to take him out that early, very big win for him. Good to see him get back in the win column. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to speak to him, but one of my favorite interviews is Jordan Wright. Just a really nice, easygoing guy, and to see him get on the win column, it was great. So yeah, Jordan's got some hands, man. He's a guy to keep an eye on at 185.
Yeah, definitely. Someone I have to get more familiar with. I'm sure I've seen him fight, but it's, we have so many fighters on the roster. I got to go back and watch the past couple fights. Great victory for him. Lennon Venata too. Got it done against Mike Grundy, and that was a great fight as well.
Venata Lando showing new life at 145. Yeah. He looks great.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you see these fighters and how they cut weight, and then basically they're going to a new weight class. It kind of looks sickening, man. It's like hard to watch when you see these guys, when they're usually at 155 and they're going to 145, right? That's a huge jump.
No, it is. But yeah, I think Lando was always on the smaller side as a lightweight, and I guess he's figured out his diet and all that. So, he looked good. He says he's there to stay. So we'll see what happens. Typically when fighters get older and they cut weight, they don't tend to do too well. But I thought Lando looked great. I think this is a right weight class for him.
And how excited is it that we have now fans, at least for the big pay-per-view events for UFC?
It's great. It does make a difference. I remember last year I was saying, I don't really notice it, but you do now with the fans back. Yes. You do notice that crowd cheer. And, you just think of all the moments we've missed that didn't have crowds, Khabib and Gaethje. There's so many moments that we didn't get to see, and to have the crowd there, it really made a difference. So I'm really glad to see. Just going forward, we're gonna have 263 will have fans. The next card I think on June 5th will not, but we're slowly getting there, and I'm excited to go. I'm excited myself to go. I haven't covered a UFC event since 2019 December, so it's been a while.
Yeah, and I haven't been to an event in a long time. I'm targeting December, man, to celebrate my big 4-0. So
awesome.
If you're down there,
40 years
I have to be down there. There's no card announced yet, but I'm looking to go down.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I'm likely going to go next year. We'll see. Okay. Maybe this year I can squeeze one in, just because I'm having my wife and I are having another child in September, might be good to kind of just thank you. It might be good to just take the rest of the year off and then go hard in 2022 and start covering these events again.
Sure. I'll see you out there, man. And yeah, Bellator MMA is going to be having fans back as well. They're following in July as well for their big card.
Yep. No, it's great to see. So it's really, really good to see. We're finally getting back to normal a little bit here and there over the next little bit.
Yeah, we still don't have the regional events here in Illinois. I'm sure they don't have that in Canada yet. And obviously
we had one actually actually I was part of the first regional event that was back since the pandemic. Okay. There was no fans. It was myself and Robin Black on commentary. We were doing for Rise FC, and the main event was actually Elias Theodoro. If you remember, he was in the UFC fighting a fellow UFC vet, Matt Dwyer, and it was a great fight. Great card. There only ended up being, I think, 2 fights, if I remember correctly, because of all the stuff that that went down. But yeah, it was a really good card, and it was fun to just be a part of something kind of unique, right? There's no fans.
Well, pretty unique that there's only 2 fights. Like usually these events are usually 4 or 5 hours, so pretty unique. How long was that event running total?
I think like an hour and a bit. Let me just trying to refresh my memory, because it was like I said, it was a few months back. It was in, when was it? It was March 13th was that event, and there was 3 fights on the card. That's right. There was 3. There was supposed to be 5, but we had some COVID stuff happen. Actually, Chad Henniger, who's going to be on Contender Series this year, he was supposed to be in the co-main event, so he didn't end up getting to fight. He had a COVID issue. So yeah, just 3 fights, but it was great. I was so good to get back in the commentary booth.
I'm sure. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm actually going on 26th to Pure MMA.
Oh, nice.
Pure FC. Yeah,
Pure FC. I know Pure FC.
Yeah, Zach Otto and Jake Clibb, they run that one, and I'm aiming to be at the November 6th. There's I don't know. They announced it, so I'll just go ahead and say Showtime MMA, Anthony Pettis' promotion. So.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's great.
Go out there on November 6th. There's Elite Amateur Fight Leagues having June 5th, but I'm not going to that one. But it's great to see events coming back. I mean, that's important.
Yeah, there's nothing like going to a live event, even if it's a regional event. There's just something about it that's just so awesome. So yeah, I'm so happy to have it back, and have the fans there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of our content from going to these events and even going to the gyms. And we just went to Dominance MMA, small Illinois gym, but we found out they're associated with CMMA, which is the same gym John Heckelman runs at the Pit.
Oh, nice.
And also the Jungle MMA where Felicia Spencer fights.
Oh, there you go. That's cool. Yeah, I recommend anyone watching this that's covering the sport, go to gyms. I mean, obviously we're in a different time now, but I mean, I've seen you go to gyms, and I know you go to the Arnold's and stuff. Like that's stuff that's easy to get. You go there and you get so much content. It's so worth it,
It is definitely. And we're looking forward for the Arnold's to come back again soon. So, obviously everything will take time, but hopefully we'll be back to normal next year in 2022. The one thing I want to talk to you about also is Diego Sanchez, departing from UFC, split with Coach Josh Fabian. I don't think Sanchez has done many interviews since the split, and I don't think he's done many interviews the past couple of years. I don't know if you had a chance to have him.
I might have been the only person to interview Diego before he got cut, because I did an interview. So I'll kind of tell you what happened, because some people are interested in this. So I do the interview with Diego. Josh was not in the interview. He's like right beside Diego, but it's just Diego on camera. And we did it like a normal interview, and Diego seemed fine. And then I see this report that he's out of the fight with Cerrone, and I'm like, what? Like, I just talked to this guy. He seemed fine. I thought maybe it was COVID, and they're like, no, it's not COVID. And I was like, okay. And then we find out the videos come out with Joshua and all this stuff, and everything happens. And then, you hear about what sort of is going on behind the scenes, and he gets cut. And, he's done, I don't think Diego's done an interview since he split with Joshua Fabian, but Joshua did an interview, and now they're like against each other. It's crazy how this is all unfolded. It's like a soap opera in MMA, what sort of transpired here. But, I've said this on other shows and even in interviews I've done. I am so bummed out the way things ended with Diego. This guy is a legend. He was the first Ultimate Fighter winner. A lot of these newer fans, they make fun of Diego for some of the wacky stuff and how he talks. And, a lot of that is probably some CTE stuff, but this is a guy that literally helped the UFC get to where he is. He was part of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, just a character. He fought for the title at lightweight against BJ Penn. I mean, this is a legend in the sport. And I really hope with Joshua out of the equation here, Diego can get some resolution with the UFC, whether that's a fight or just him even just, getting acknowledged and getting put in the Hall of Fame, because he didn't win a title, but this is a guy, like I said, that was really part of one of, the Ultimate Fighter, which, is now coming back and has been a very successful show and has helped launch the careers of a lot of fighters here. I would love to see Diego get his proper send off. You don't want him getting sent off a coach trying to expose his medical record. Like the whole thing was just shady, and I hope Diego gets his due.
Definitely. I mean, I had Stephen Bonner on the show before Diego Sanchez fight. He was in his corner, so I'd be interested to hear his take on all this as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, Stephen Bonner is he's a little out there these days, but I had a chance to speak to him recently as well. But yeah, you just hope that Diego gets some good resolution here.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Maybe he'll sign with another promotion. We'll see. Maybe he'll get into the crazy boxing YouTuber world. Like we're seeing with the Paul brothers.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
What do you think about all that? Like, you buy that they're making these numbers? Like they're being
I do, because you got to think it's like they're hitting a different audience, right? Like the YouTubers are catering to like the younger audience. I don't think that's an audience that the UFC or boxing has been able to tap into. And I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Like all these people are saying it's bad for boxing. I disagree. You throw what was it, the what fight was on there, the Jake Paul and not the Axton fight, the guy he fought before,
Nate Robinson.
Nate Robinson. They put that on the Mike Tyson card. That probably helped Mike Tyson get some more views on his pay-per-view. You're getting younger fighters watching. So I think it's its own thing. I sort of equate it to being like celebrity boxing in the 90s. Like I don't really have a problem with it, as long as they're not putting them on like a Showtime card ahead of like some notable fighters, then, you know, and I know Jake Paul did sign with Showtime, but you get what I'm saying here. I hope that they, you know, that would only be the spot right out of an issue. But if Triller wants to do their own cards like on their own, I'm fine with that. There's an audience for it. I'm totally cool with it.
Definitely. And we have Logan Paul, who's stepping up to fight Mayweather.
Like Floyd Mayweather. I'm going to watch that. That's kind of intriguing. I'll be honest. Logan's a much bigger fighter and he's fighting the GOAT. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. Who would have thought that would happen out of nowhere, right?
I know, exactly. It's kind of crazy that we're seeing.
I think it just brings, you know, more relevance to boxing too as time goes on. I mean,
yeah, why not bring a different audience? Like I said, you're getting the preteens, the kids that are, you know, watching the Paul brothers on YouTube that might be boxing fans now. I think it's a positive.
You think Dana's looking at that in a negative light because he seems like he's just doesn't want to talk about it or even acknowledge what they're doing?
Well, I think he's getting annoyed at people asking him about it. I mean, I can understand that. He's running the UFC, which is MMA. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with that. But I think, you know, he's got to look at that too and say, man, those numbers. I mean, like, you know, and he did this. And listen, Dana's guilty of this as well. I mean, CM Punk got a main card spot on a UFC pay-per-view when there's more deserving fighters. And CM Punk had no martial arts experience. So I can understand that. Plus, he also booked James Toney against Couture, right? So it's one of those things where, you know, I can understand his frustration, but at the same time, they've done moves like that as well.
Definitely. And so when we have PFL comes back, that's going to be exciting, June 10th. I know you've been working with PFL with some content on Twitter, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
And what do you think of that next card with Claressa Shields, Brittney Elkin?
I'm excited. I am very intrigued. And here's the thing with Claressa Shields that, you know, is different from, say, like a Holly Holm or Heather Hardy. Claressa's young. Like, she's not even in the prime of her career right now. And for her to come over and do MMA now, and for her to make the smart choice of training at Jackson Wink, same campus Holly Holm, I think she's going to do great. I'm very excited for her. And again, I do work for PFL, but even outside of that, I'm just excited to see how she'll do, because obviously the stand-up's good, but, you know, the ground game, how far can that come along over the next couple of years?
Definitely. Elkin is a, you know, she's competed in many grappling tournaments.
Seven fight vet, right? So
yeah, and you know, she actually fought Kayla Harrison. I was there in Chicago when they fought in the main event. So
there you go.
Like a non-tournament feature attraction, whatever, and Kayla handled her. So I think Kayla owns that division, and we can't wait to see her. You know what she brings if she comes to UFC one day.
Same here. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Very excited. Yeah, and I think Elkin is tough. You can't, you know, can counter out against in this fight. It's just going to be an interesting one to see if it's going to be a grappling fight or Claressa keeps it standing and takes her into her domain. I think it's intriguing, grappler versus striker.
Well, it is interesting because, well, Brittney's lost a lot by submission as well. So I think they kind of knew that by design when booking the fight. But I'm looking here on Tapology. She's done just a handful of grappling matches leading into this fight. So we'll see if that's helped her at all.
Definitely. And then what do you do during off week? We have no UFC, no Bellator MMA.
Oh, great question. So you're going to love this, Sean. So I'll tell you what I'll probably spend some time with my family, but you know what I'm really into right now? And this is where we speak the same language here. I mean, we always do anyways. There's a lot of similar interests you and I have, but I've been watching the A&E biography wrestling documentaries. Awesome. So the Shawn Michaels one I watched this week, I got to catch up on Ultimate Warrior. So I'll probably be watching more of that. And Dark Side of the Ring is back. I'll be watching that too. I'm like obsessed with these wrestling documentaries right now. So I'm all into that. Too. Yeah, and I got the Royal Rumble shirt from Homage. Great site if you ever look for t-shirts. They're awesome. So I'll be doing a bit of that. Probably watching some NHL playoffs as well, even though my Canucks were out. They were never in the playoffs, but I'll be keeping tabs on that. And what else? What do I got planned? Maybe go in the pool. My mom bought a new house, so they have a pool in the backyard. Might hit that up and just take it easy, man. Enjoy the weekend. And you know, we don't get weekends like this too often, so it's nice to have a little break. What about you? What are you up to? I'm curious. What do you got planned?
We have actually Sunday is a big AEW show. All the wrestling.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, they're doing great things over there in AEW.
Yeah. So I'll be watching. I'm actually going to a friend's house for that. We'll be doing a short podcast, doing a barbecue with friends on Saturday. And today, nothing much. Just stuff to unpack and, you know, put in the storage.
And talk and shop with me. That's what you're doing today too, right?
Exactly. Just a fun day at home. Yeah, I mean, I think that pro wrestling's amazing, you know, just like how we can chronicleize it. I think it comes out better sometimes than like the UFC and MMA, how they can chronicleize everything, you know, and just a rich history. I mean, you know, obviously when we have more history with the UFC, like for like a decade from now, we can get to that point. But just like all those spin-off documentaries are really going mainstream, like Dark Side of the Ring and A&E stuff. Really
well, it's cool because you know what it is, Sean? It really taps into, like, I watched pro wrestling during the Attitude Era, so there's stuff I just forgot about, and now going back and seeing it, and even like watching the Shawn Michaels documentary, like I had I guess I kind of remember that him and Brett had buried the hatchet, but like to see it all unfold, and for Shawn to go on camera and say that was one of his regrets, was doing the Montreal Screwjob, I just have so much more respect for him because I never liked Shawn Michaels, but obviously you watch the documentary, you see that was whole. part of his personality. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for him now to see what he's gone through and everything. It's pretty cool.
For sure. If you check out some of his matches in the later part of his career, he had some great matches with Undertaker.
And Undertaker and Rich. Yeah, they talk about that in the documentary, so it was really cool. And it's I don't know. I'm a sucker for that type of documentaries. Like I can watch that stuff all day. It's great.
So if you could interview a pro wrestler, current or past, that's alive, who would it be?
Bret Hart, easily.
Bret Hart, nice.
I have to. Got to go with the Canadian choice, right? So.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You know, he's got a rich background. Also, you know, him and you know what he did with his father in the Hart Dungeon. That was
and not that far away from me. He lives out in Calgary, which is about, you know, just to give you an idea, you could drive there from Vancouver. It's not that close, but it'd be like a, you know, but you fly to Calgary, it's like an hour flight. It's pretty easy to get there. So yeah, he's a Western Canada guy like myself.
Definitely. I mean, his father, if he was alive today, like he would probably be a legitimate MMA coach in his style of wrestling. It was like
Stu Hart, the Hart's the Dungeon. There's great stories. Stampede Wrestling back in the 90s, I think it was a huge deal here in Canada. It's actually, that's what's cool for me too, is just knowing the history that a lot of the, you know, obviously you had the territories back in the day, but to see that Stu Hart was a guy that really trained so many exceptional wrestlers is pretty cool to see in the history there.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of great stuff. And we've been doing a lot of that with the Pro Wrestling Force. We've been interviewing local wrestlers.
I know, I've been watching. You've been doing a great job with that, man. It's cool to see you do both, you know, sports, because I think it's I know sports entertainment, just so people don't correct me. But yeah, it's cool because I'm a very casual like pro wrestling fan today. Like I sort of know what's going on. I don't sit down and watch like an AEW or like a, you know, an Impact or WWE or anything, but I'm keeping tabs. I kind of hope my son gets into pro wrestling because that was a big thing for me when I was growing up. So.
Definitely take him to a show, you know, when you have a chance.
I've never been. I want to go, Sean. That's one of my regrets. I've never been to a WWE or AEW. So yeah, that's definitely on my list of things to do for sure.
And then one of the interviews that you might appreciate is I did an interview with Earl Hebner. It was a fun interview. Wasn't that long, but it was a fun one.
Oh, cool.
We did it in person.
Oh, so. I got to check that out. You know, I have interviewed a pro wrestler. I interviewed Goldberg years ago.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel. I interviewed him a couple of years ago. It was actually like an MMA connection there. He knew like this local fighter, and we sort of made the connection there. And as far as getting the interview, but that was cool to get to interview him because I remember watching him. And obviously he did MMA work as well. He was a commentator for Elite XC. I think people forget that. So. Yeah.
And then we have UFC 263 up June 12th. Another big card. You know, besides Adesanya versus Vettori, we have Diaz and Edwards. But do you think the fans are sleeping on the Flyweight Co-Main Event rematch? Figueiredo versus Moreno. I'm looking
maybe a little bit, because I mean they're not big names, and I think that's also why. And I think it's going to help them that Diaz and Edwards is on the card to bring in some of those fans. But yeah, great fight. I don't know. It's like is it being slept on? I would say so a little bit. I kind of gauge the interest by, you know, I do the pros picks videos. I kind of gauge like what the interest is. Not a lot of interest on those videos, to be honest. More so on the main event. Even though I mean I think Izzy's probably going to beat Vettori again, but we'll see.
Right. And then Diaz versus Edwards. I mean, for that to not be a title and they're giving it 5 rounds is just, you know, kind of out there. Like,
well, I don't know. So I've heard conflicting reports. I know initially when it was on 262, it was 5 rounds. I don't know if that's still the case. I have to double check that. But if I mean, it should be, hopefully, because that's what they negotiated in the first place, right?
Yeah, do you think you should have like a BMF title or something for that? Because they are going to go 5 rounds. So at least
maybe, I don't know. I think it's more of a pay thing as to why they're doing the 5-round fight. I think the UFC is trying to get their money's worth, and Diaz is like, look, if I'm going to come back, you got to pay me what I want. So I think that's part of it too.
And you think Edwards is going to handle that?
I do, yeah. I just, you know, like if Diaz was like a Dan Henderson like power puncher, I'd give him a puncher's chance. But I mean, Leon's, you know, mind you, Leon hasn't been too active, but I think Leon takes it. I mean, I thought Leon was winning that fight against Bilal before the eye poke. So, I mean, he's pretty legit.
So you've done some interesting interviews the past year. Like, which one to you stood out the most?
Oh man, so many that I've done over the last year. Well, we'll start with, as far as year, we'll go like since I went back to freelance. We'll forget about when I was working before there. But I've had some good ones. Maybe my one with I don't know. I've really enjoyed interviewing Yuri Prohaska. He's just such an interesting guy to me. He's his English isn't great, but at least he doesn't use a translator. He just tries to hear it out. I think he's definitely one of the most interesting guys I've spoken to over the last year for sure.
Yeah, and what I wanted to mention is you did have Kendra Luss, adult film star. She was on your show.
Yes, the great Kendra Luss. Yes, she's Kendra's awesome actually. She you know, she's very much involved in MMA. She does the Beauty and the Beast podcast, and I don't know if a lot of people know. I mean, I'll tell you on here. It's not like a huge secret, but I actually edit her show. So
cool.
So I talk to Kendra a lot because we you know, we work together. So she does the podcast with Julian Marquez, who's a, you know, UFC middleweight good friend of mine as well. So I do that behind the scenes for them, and it's cool. I'll probably get Kendra on in a little bit because I was just thinking about that the other day. I haven't interviewed her in a while, but she's couldn't have been nicer. One of the nicest people ever. And I know people are weird about that whole industry, but she couldn't be nicer. And she knows her MMA. I mean, she's friends with a lot of the fighters as well. Like, Eric Anders, Julian, Juan Archuleta, and their show's actually really good. They've had Brian Ortega on, they've had Ben Askren. It's kind of like a hybrid show. They'll get a variety of different guests. They had Tyler Minton on this week, who's the nutritionist who's worked with Khabib and a lot of other fighters. So it's been cool getting to kind of know her over the last little bit and just know how much of a fan she is of the sport.
Yeah, it is. I mean, she seems really in tune with the pop culture. She's also into pro wrestling, so.
I know, a bit of everything, huh? Right? Like, it's interesting. We even had her on our Victory Loves Company podcast, the podcast I do with Jim West. And I know that, I know that her daughter's actually in MMA as well. And I think, she might be going to do some training with Aspen Ladd. She's still a young girl, but, just that Aspen's a hero to a lot of women out there. So it's kind of cool that they might connect and everything. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, she came out for the last Bellator event in Chicago. I saw her walk by me.
Yeah, I know. You can't miss her. She's
exactly. She was with her daughter, I think. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And of course, we can't wait for more of those events to come. So man, Bellator comes to Chicago, please come in and you're definitely welcome anytime. You want to hit up some MMA gyms too?
Yeah, no, I got to, hopefully I can get back to Chicago at some point. Man, we had a good night that night. We went and did the arcade. Yes. What's the name of that place? That was one of the best arcade bars I've been to in a while.
Oh, Replay.
Yeah. I really like that place.
Definitely. So that's about all I have for you, man. I appreciate you being on the show, and everybody check out James Lynch, check out his content as well. Lynch on Sports. Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug? Let us know.
I just dropped an interview today with Rob Font. You guys can check that out. He course won last weekend against Cody Garbrandt. Actually booking some interviews hopefully after this for next week. But yeah, Font was one that I did this week that was pretty good. I just talked to Darren Stewart as well, who's going to be rematching Eric Anders. Talked to Ariane Lipsky ahead of her fight with Montana De La Rosa. Really cool stuff. She's moved to ATT and training there now.
Nice.
And yeah, man, just thanks for having me on. I always love doing your show. And it's great to see all the work you're doing. And I know you got some other guys working for you now as well, some other journalists and stuff. So it's cool, man. Good to see all the success you're having. And again, congrats on the exercise and all the weight loss and stuff. And hopefully I'll see you next year, man. It's always a good time chatting with you. And I always love doing your show, man. It's always good to catch up with you.
Oh, definitely, man. We love having you on Talking Shop podcast. James Lynch, check out his content, man, interviewing some of the big names, UFC, Bellator, and around the world. Appreciate you being on the show. Sean Lennon here, host of the Fight Report. Make sure to check out Mayweather versus Paul. We'll be hosting a Fight Report special remote podcast live at Mullins, 7301 Northwestern Avenue. No cover. Fights begin at 7 p.m. Remote podcast starts 8 p.m. And join Michael Batts and myself. Fightlete.com will be there. Mayweather did great in his last exhibition. Hell, he beat the Big Show at WrestleMania. So, only can imagine what he could do against Jake Paul, the infamous YouTuber, Sunday night. Be there.